rather quick draw in the first one. Do you think we'll see some more action in this one, David?
Definitely see more action. Already, Duda is playing a very provocative opening. This one I've played myself many times before as white. It's the Reti opening, but this last pawn push does invite black's central pawn, black's d pawn, to push forward in the center, and this is a significant risk. It doesn't have a great reputation for white, and okay, Mamedyarov doesn't play the critical move. He doesn't seize the ball by the horns. He captures a pawn, and he's trying to make this look like a queen's gambit accepted. It looks like black grabbed a pawn, the queen's gambit, and white later won the pawn back, but white's central pawn, the d pawn, hasn't committed to the center. So white is very flexible in these types of positions.
Yeah, and intriguingly, I'm just checking the database, and I can see that Mamedyarov has played this before and lost, although it was a blitz game.
Okay, so he lost with the black pieces.
With the black pieces, yeah.
Against?
Diak.
Okay.
A strong Romanian grandmaster.
Yeah.
Okay. And he seems to be nearly repeating the same type of approach. So it is just simply to push this pawn forward and develop the pieces.
Yeah, and the big difference between this game and the first game we saw today is that all the pieces remain on the board, and they likely will for at least the next 10 or 15 moves. Maybe that's optimistic, 15 moves, but for the next 10 moves, it's just about keeping pieces on the board. Maybe Duda at some point will extend in the center with white. White has 2 pawns on the E and D files in the middle. Black only has 1, so unless Duda is really in the mood to make exchanges and kind of finds a way, then I think we'll get a much bigger fight. And what do you think, Ivanka? Kind of surprising choice from Duda in a way. I haven't seen him play like this many times before.
I wasn't necessarily surprised by Duda's opening choice. I was surprised more by Mamedyarov capturing that pawn, because it's not something I've seen too often at the higher levels. And I think what we're going to see here is, again, what I call baseline tennis, chess. You know, white's simply going to castle, black's going to also develop light square bishops. All the pieces are going to be within their own turf, and they'll be just lobbying those shots to one another. And then when there is a break in the center, the position will explode.
Yep. So not going to explode yet. Duda thinking the most natural move here, I guess, would be to castle the white king. You could push a couple of different pawns as well, but not for the first time today. This knight jump has surprised us. It surprised us in the first game, and surprising again. I guess there's a specific idea in mind, but it looks a bit superficial. White's using the same piece twice in the opening. We criticised Mamedyarov for that earlier. And Ivanka, is this a novelty?
Not a novelty. It's been played before.
Okay.
But just one person tried it out, and it was a draw. So I'm guessing the idea, as you referred to, was basically to stop black developing the light squared bishop.
Yeah, so this is always the problem piece in actually many black openings, but the whole idea for black would normally be to attack this bishop, and this would allow white to jump forward with the queen and hit the rook in the corner. I'm not sure how effective this is. The rook in the corner isn't quite trapped. The rook can actually move 1 square, so this would have been maybe okay. White's bishop under fire, might have to retreat, but instead Mamedyarov moved a knight, and Duda, he's really being creative. This knight in the center was challenged, and he's defended it with the f-pawn. You nearly never see this in the Reti opening, white pushing forward with the f-pawn. The idea is just to defend the knight.
Yeah, it feels like he's borrowing ideas from other openings, like maybe in Sicilian defense, where you get this particular idea of just maybe retreating the knight and then lunging forward with the f-pawn. Again, sorry, I cannot resist it. I just love pushing my pawns forward. I love just elongating those diagonals. I can't help it.
Yeah, Duda loves it too, Ivanka.
Yeah.
He loves pushing those pawns forward.
And I do think it's asking a little bit much from the position. I mean, if I were black, I would just look at my opponent and go, well, maybe what's stopping me from perhaps kicking back the bishop?
Yeah, for example, attacking this bishop. Maybe Duda's idea again is the same, to attack this rook in the corner. Maybe this is a bit awkward to deal with. Now the big difference is that if black's rook moves, the white knight could jump forward. A lot of calculation to be done here. It's not 100% clear the consequences of this one. For example, it could get really complicated if black pins the white knight along this diagonal. But yeah, some calculation to be done already. Do you think Duda, if he's given time, he'll start throwing more pawns forward, Ivanka? You mentioned you love pushing pawns.
Yeah.
It's possible.
The whole hog. This is what we want to see. We heard from Ginger GM earlier on in the show. Attack! Push Harry!
We have a new Daniel Naroditsky in your invitations here, David.
I'm not sure I'm as accurate as Naroditsky is with his. But either way, it looks like Duda's intention is to attack. And Shak is facing the attack this time. He's not used to that situation. He normally wants to be the one on the front foot. Interesting strategy from Duda. I do like where his bishops are placed as well. Normally when you have bishops like this on the long diagonals, that's a signal. Go forward. F for forward, he's pushing the F-pawn, and Duda on the front foot.
Okay, so does this look like a game that will end up with a winner, or at least some chaos?
Chaos, I think, most likely.
Yeah.
Too early maybe to say win, lose, draw, but Duda's going for it. Do you think this is a strategy in general, Jovanka, against Mamedyarov? Solid with black, attack with white?
Well, I did have a look at the database earlier on this morning, and I did check out the games that these two have played, especially on the tour, and it just seems that they play very wild games. You know, one of them, I mean, it's always both of them are at fault here. Both of them just kind of lunge for the other. They initiate this complicated, random position, and then, you know, something will happen. There will be a roller coaster of a game, and you'll see a result within move 40. So it's exciting anyhow, and there we see Mamedyarov step forward with his G-pawn, perhaps just to solidify his pawn structure there on the right and get ready to develop the dark squared bishop. And the bar did not like that at all. It suddenly, now it's adjusting itself. It was a bit overexcited there.
It does look very risky, very counterintuitive to open up the diagonal of white's dark squared bishop. If you look at white's dark squared bishop on b2, the diagonal, suddenly black's rook in the corner, feels a bit vulnerable. Maybe it's fine, it's holding together for now. But I'm impressed Mamedyarov had this move on his radar, even I would never have dreamed of picking up that pawn. And, OK, Duda smiling? Oh, it looked like he was about to smile. He kind of cut himself off, now frowning again. He really looks like the boss, just...
Yeah, I know.
I like David's evil laughter.
Yeah.
And we're talking about laughter, and today we're asking you guys at home to send us your best chess joke. And Woke Jokes says to us, so I was having dinner with Garry Kasparov. Problem was we had a checkered tablecloth, and it took him 2 hours to pass the salt. And Heidi the H-pawn says, sorry, Kaya. What does Kaya scream every time she passes by the Good Night in Oslo?
Look at the bar! I'm going to start doing that now. Very nice.
Love it.
Yeah, it's
And
very good.
Maximalist asks us, which knight always loses at chess? This is a nice one. Don't look at the punchline. Oh, no.
I haven't looked.
I've seen it. Whoops.
It's very good.
Always loses at chess?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Surrender.
Surrender.
Surrender. Surrender. It's my sense of humour. I love these puns. I know some people don't like them, but I do. So keep them coming. Send us your best chess jokes on the hashtag ChessChamps, and one lucky winner will win a mugshot of Simon on a mug.
Yeah. Very cool, you guys. And Duda now thinking for 2.5 minutes on this move. He is in move 9. And they have played each other 14 times altogether on the tour, these two, leading up to today, before today started. Can you guess the score between them?
7-7. No. I should have done my research.
7.
Oh, I meant including draws, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know their overall score, but I do know that on the tour final, it went to tie breaks. They both had a win apiece. And then Duda was just overwhelmingly good in the tie breaks. And the same thing happened in the Oslo Esports Cup. So
that's in Blitz games?
That's in Blitz
I'm
games.
not sure if Blitz games are counted here.
You'll have to enlighten us, Kaya.
So 8 draws.
OK.
3 wins each.
OK.
So it's dead equal before the final starts.
Wow. Level scores.
Yeah.
7-7, right? 14 games.
Yeah, so yeah.
I'll pretend I knew that.
Yeah, that's
Lucky
very
guess.
good.
But yeah, that just shows both these players very balanced. And similar, we mentioned in some aspects of their game. Okay, finally, both sides have castles. We are out of the opening. And it is very, very tense. Both sides have problem pieces. Black's light squared bishop completely locked in. I think Shak wants to prioritize getting that piece out. And for white, it's the knight on the queen side still asleep. Needs to bring that to the central square at some point soon. But yeah, just a very odd pawn structure. You nearly never see this one. White's D pawn as well, sitting in front of the white queen. That pawn normally moves on move 1 or move 2,
yeah.
maybe even move 3. But it's move 11 now and still not advanced. So it does look a bit odd. But yeah, white has control over the center for now. It's just about whether Mamedyarov can bring his pieces out.
Could it move to the d4 square, or would that be a bad move for him?
No, I think you're right, Kai. That might be part of the plan at some point in the near future. If we just jump in, just to highlight the plans for Duda, if he wants to play a bit slower, then he'll go for development, maybe move the queen. This looks like a decent square for her. She's kind of pinning along this diagonal some targets there. White's knight could also come out. It depends, for example, if the white knight comes out, do you want to capture in the center with a pawn for white? This pawn is potentially strong, potentially weak, it's not clear. So that's one question. If you want to be more direct, then your move, Kaya. You can play with a pawn forward in the center. The only downside, it's good that you open it up because I think you have great central control, but the only downside is that now the pawn structure is almost symmetrical. So symmetrical means both sides have pawns on the A, B, E, F, G, H files, so no passed pawn potential. So if all the pieces disappear, then the pawns kind of balance each other out. So in the current position, that's not the case. There is an imbalance. This pawn is advanced, but it could be weak. This pawn is nice and safe, very flexible. So I think we might see this at some point pushing forward, but maybe not yet.
Okay.
I'm more expecting Duda to play with pieces. When I prepare for opponents, I always think there's two different types of player. Players who attack with pawns, players who attack with pieces. And both of these like to play with pieces. Pawn structure is maybe secondary to them. For me, pawn structure is like the #1 issue in chess. I'm always looking, oh, I have a nice chain here. Or my opponent's pawn here could potentially be weak. Maybe I can push forward and kind of cut off the protection of this pawn. But these two, they look for piece activity. Maybe more than anyone else in world chess right now, these two. So yeah, I'm expecting Duda to move the white queen or maybe this white knight. So one of these two, which are not doing anything at the moment.
But then you, with your style, would you move that pawn, or would you also not move it because you want that passed pawn?
Yeah, I think I would move a pawn. I might move this pawn in the corner. So the reason I would move this is because now my opponent's B pawn is kind of locked down. If they push it forward, at some point I could capture en passant, as if it moved one square. And for example, even if there's a capture here, my opponent now, I would be thinking, oh, I've got a better pawn structure. White has one isolated pawn over here, but black has two isolated pawns, so white's pawn structure is better long term. But this is because I have very kind of niche thinking. I'm like, oh, looking for these tiny, small advantages. But these two players, I don't think they'll be worrying about that. They'll be thinking about how to activate. And also, this type of pawn push, it does tie down the white rook to defend this pawn quite long term. Interesting,
though, David. Does that happen a lot, that you don't actually sort of suggest and show us the move that you would play?
Sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it depends who we're watching. If we're watching Magnus, then often the move I suggest might be on his radar too, just because I feel that he likes the long-term, grindy type of positions. But these two, I'm trying to get in their minds, and I'm thinking, OK, Duda wants to attack. That's clearly his strategy with this opening. How would he do that? It would be bringing a queen forward or bringing a knight forward. It wouldn't be just a small kind of... Knowing my luck, he's going to play it now, but probably not his style.
No, I have to say it was.
He does play it. Okay.
I was channeling that as well, and I liked this idea because one of the reasons why I was also drawn to this particular pawn move is it also secures the position of the light squared bishop, and in my mind, I was trying to set up a very weird configuration.
Okay.
Okay, it basically involved the queen trying to make its way to the A1 square.
Okay, so for example, let's say black plays a few moves.
Yeah.
You move your knight out, I'll play another move, you move your rook somewhere.
Yeah.
And you want to bring the white queen across.
I wanted this type of configuration. I mean, I wasn't quite sure where to put the knight. That was the
Yeah.
only thing that wasn't
So again, for example, you
clear.
want your knight out the way.
Yeah.
But you want your queen and bishop lined up on this diagonal.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
That's how I was also trying to approach the position. But I feel that the knight is too much of a problem piece there. And meanwhile, we have seen the knight move to the centre and white take a step back. Now, OK.
There's tension now between these two bishops. White's knight, it looks a bit convoluted, just dropping back to a square that gets in the way of your pawns. But, for example, if the bishops disappear, then, again, later you're free to push this pawn. But I think, actually, Duda's long-term strategy is positional. He wants to target this weakness. This is why we push the pawn forward as well, because the only pawn that can ever protect this black c-pawn is its body here on b6, but then it will always get traded off by white's pawn now. So, actually, this pawn is not quite isolated, but it's essentially isolated. And where white's knight stands at the moment, it's always going to target this guy. So it's not just locking down the position, but it's also got clear targets in mind. This black pawn's kind of cut off from the rest of its buddies right now. Interesting. I mean, Duda, he's going against his usual style, which is fascinating for me, at least. Is it tailored specifically to this 1-versus-1 head-to-head match? Duda has actually had a very good score this tournament against the young Indian players, and as Magna said, anti-young player chess. It's kind of like slow, strategic. And the same could be used for Mamedyarov. He might be the oldest player in the tournament, but he plays like a youngster, energetic. So it feels like Duda is trying to slow down the pace of the game.
Interesting.
Yeah. I like this decision, actually, and both sides having their pros and cons, you know, and the more I look at it, the more it's not that easy for black to actually take those decisions, you know, should he trade off bishops? Should he allow white to trade off bishops? And he does trade off the dark square bishop. And then the second question is, like, what is black going to do with the knight sitting on d7? Is it going to develop? Is the queen going to come out and try to cover those dark squares? Ooh, there's so many decisions to take here that could potentially influence whether it's a big advantage for white, small advantage, or just equal. So critical moment right now. And whilst Mamedyarov is pondering as to what to do, we have another joke.
Oh,
This time from Sagar Jain, who says, "Why are our artists so bad at chess?"
I don't know.
Because they like to
Draw.
Very good. But you're not bad at chess if you're able to draw a game. I would love it if I was able to do that.
Yeah. Winning is the joy, though. That's the point of chess. But, OK, meanwhile, there has been a traded pawn. So we did see that en passant idea. So white's a pawn that was far advanced, it has been traded off. But now pawn structure, we talk about pawn islands. White has one big island from the d-file.
In the stream?
Yeah, I was actually about to say that, and I was like, can I get away with that one? The white d-pawn to the h-file, that's all one pawn island. They can all protect each other, potentially. But white has one isolated b-pawn. Black has 3 pawn islands because he has 2 isolated pawns, the a and c pawns. The rest protect each other. So you want as few as possible. It's not like Greece, where you want as many islands as possible. Go on a holiday, it's fine. You want as few as possible in chess. That means you have fewer weaknesses. And, OK, black's knight does have an outpost. I do like what Shak's done in terms of his bishop. Black's bishop was his worst-placed piece, and now his bishop's maybe his best minor piece. Black's bishop on a nice long diagonal.
I really like what Shak has done, you know, because he solved all his opening problems, and he's got a very good piece, as you mentioned, a knight on an outpost. That's what every knight wants to be. And then the queen is coming out to cover the dark squares around the king. The rooks will line up into the centre. Nice, straightforward plan. Now is the time for Duda to find something active to do, and it must be to do with relocating the knight on the edge of the board and put it towards the centre.
Yeah, white really doesn't have many good squares to go to with this knight, so I expect the same. You want this square, Jovanka?
Yep.
Yeah. So we talk about outposts. Black's knight can never, ever get kicked away by a pawn, and it's supported by its own pawn, so this is an outpost. And white's knight has the same. For example, if you jump forward, let's say there's a trade of knights, this knight also can't get kicked away by any pawns, and it's just as good as black's knight next to it. So these two pieces kind of cancel each other out. But I love white's knight on this square, to be honest. Knights are best also in front of isolated pawns, and that's the case for this piece. Also the case for black's pawn, but this piece is maybe nearer the king side. So later, if it does switch to an attack, white's knight is slightly closer in the race than black's knight. Yeah, small margins here. The computer thinks it's dead level, and I think I would choose white slightly, but I'm not surprised. Both players have decent pieces right now.
Oh, I'm surprised, actually, both by the computer and you choosing white, because I was going to choose black.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was thinking, I love Shak's position. You know, he's got a great bishop.
But pawn islands, Ivanka.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is interesting. I mean, there's no right or wrong. We're both right in a way because it's level chances, and it's just a matter of taste. And that's why, from a human aspect, you need to know your style in order to know whether you want to play with kind of good pieces or good pawn structure. Normally, you can't choose both. Here it's kind of a bit of both for each side. They have great pieces, but the pawns aren't ideal. And yeah, let's go back to the players. You mentioned, Ivanka, that strategy around move 20, it would start to heat up. It is heating up now.
Oh.
By move 40, you think normally it's going to be clear who's going to have the advantage or who's going to be dominating?
Yes.
So the next 10, 15 moves.
Next moves are critical. And also, I've noticed that their positions are so sharp that the evaluation will often swing. So often you'll see like, hey, white is winning, and then they will make one inaccuracy, and then, oh, black is winning. And you go through this turbulent ride, and you're just holding onto the edge of the seats, and you're trying to figure out desperately what's going to happen next. And I mean, Levon Aronian said it quite simply. When you play Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, you have to bring your tactical A game with you. I mean, you have to be looking at every single checks, capture, threats. You have to be looking at the activity of his pieces, and you have to try to contain it, you know, kill the game. But this is not really in Duda's style to kind of play so methodically and logically. I mean, he's also an artist.
Yeah, but it's quite visible that he is changing his style a bit. Look at this last rook move. It's just stepping up one square. He's protecting his pawns on the second rank. White has a lot of them, and it's a very slow defensive move. Again, it's the type of move I love, just because it covers your ground. You're just getting ready in case there is some action, but it's not what we associate with Duda. And Shak covering the dark squares. Black's dark squares around his king were previously vulnerable, so he's put a pawn to cover. For example, that white knight now cannot go towards the black king due to this pawn push. Interesting stuff. It's very tense, very cagey. Just, again, strategy on every move. Evaluation bar heading in white's direction now, but it is hard to see why. Black's pieces, they are all perfectly ready for any direct confrontation. Yeah, again, it looks like the type of position you toss a coin, you're like, oh, I'll take white, that's fine. White has decent chances. Oh, toss a coin. Black's doing well too. And clock times, though, it's definitely in black's favour. Mamedyarov playing much quicker than Duda. That could be relevant later. Not quite now, but where's Simon when we need him?
Look at that. Harry has advanced. I mean, you were talking about playing like logically stepping forward, overprotecting everything, and Duda's like, OK, I'm impatient now. Yeah. This is too deep for me. Let's just go back to what I do best. And that is move my pawns forward, start probing Mamedyarov's kingside for weaknesses. I like this, obviously. I mean, is that any surprise? I mean, the next move is to lift up the pawn one square forward. Yeah. Now we see Mamedyarov just not reacting to that move at all, and instead improving his bishop. And wow, the bar hates that move. I mean, why?
It looks like a good move to me. Black's bishop nicely centralized, controlling some key squares. Black's knight as well. It looks great. How can white be that much better? I still prefer white slightly, but +1 advantage, equivalent to a pawn? That's surprising.
Huh.
What could the idea be here?
And
whoa, Duda's going all-out attack. No more subtlety anymore. All the pawns forward.
He's burning the bridges. With great space comes great responsibility. And now it's going to be all about those light squares in front of the white king and whether white will be able to generate that attack.
Really interesting stuff. This would never have crossed my mind, I've got to say, not in a million years. I mentioned they prefer to play with pieces, but at the moment the pieces are quite stuck. So this is Duda's attempt to break his pieces open. Give them some life, and I think the idea is actually quite a positional one, Ivanka.
to play the g pawn forward and secure the e5 square for the knight.
So, for example, if black waits, like a semi-useful move, then, yeah, this pawn push hits this pawn, hits the f-pawn. Now, a decision needs to be made for black. This pawn is attacked twice. If you capture, then I don't think this is great. White's rook can swing across and use the h-file later. But if you block it up, that's not great either. Like you said, the e5 square. We talked about outposts, and this is a perfect outpost for the white knight. It's going to sit in the center of the board, beautifully controlling everything. Octo knight, as you used to call it, Ivanka.
Yep.
Its tentacles controlling both sides of the board. And yeah, this is really interesting because on the face of it, superficially at least, in this position, it looks like white's just opened up his king for no reason. He's not attacking the black king. You don't have enough pieces going towards that black king, but it's just a purely strategic idea. And that's rare when you push 3 pawns, the 3-pawn attack.
Wow.
Yeah, it's. Do we think we'll see Mamedyarov try to prevent this by going for the 4-pawn wall? I don't know, just a wall of 4 pawns, trying to stop the white pawns marching forward. It looks a bit shaky, though.
That looks very fragile. I mean, people will be asking us why we think it looks shaky, because after all, the pawns are all in a row.
I was going to ask, because I think they look powerful. Mean girls in the high school hallway.
Yeah, it's like a shield wall of warriors. This pawn is fine for now, but I think it's actually this pawn that's the big weakness, because white's queen is eyeing it up from afar, black's queen is tied down defending it. Yeah, I guess it doesn't look that shaky if the black king kind of just comes forward, defends the other loose pawns. Yeah, it's on my radar, at least. I would be very tempted to stop the advance of white's pawn by pushing the black pawn. But Mamedyarov, remember, he wants to play for pieces. He always wants to have the safer king. So temporarily, white's king is a bit more open than black's king. There's more kind of empty squares around it. So Mamedyarov, he might be looking for ways to attack. For example, the black knight could swing across, attacking the white queen, but it's just a one-mover. The white queen can slide to safety, so that doesn't really achieve much. The black knight could also jump into this square, attack the white rook, but it's just a one-mover. The white rook can move away. You haven't gained anything. So there's lots of ways of creating one-move attacks, but Shak is trying to create a longer-term plan in the current position. It's Duda being really creative. I've got to admire it.
Yeah.
Breaking all the rules in different situations now. In the opening, moving the same piece many times, pushing pawns in front of your king. It's not what we teach to kind of beginners, maybe, but it shows once you've got good pieces, your position has resources like this one.
And this is a very unusual position. I mean, let's face it, when do we see something like this? So neither player will be able to draw on their bank of patterns that they use to help them and find their plans. And I agree, you know, I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks on the board. And I do suspect that we will see this wall of pawns from Mamedyarov.
That would be cool.
That would be very, very cool.
Meanwhile, his time advantage has nearly disappeared. Mamedyarov, he was 4 or 5 minutes up on the clock. And spending 4 minutes on this one move, slides his queen across. Now, the queens sit on the same diagonal as each other, so I guess his idea is if that diagonal opens up, he's happy with the queen exchange.
Okay.
Interesting decision.
Yeah, but also is the idea to improve the queen, put her on h6 and tack some pawns?
Possibly. Or maybe going towards the white king at some point, if she's allowed.
If she's allowed, of course.
Back to Duda. Very difficult decision here.
Will we see a winner in this game now, do you think?
It's imbalanced enough. Pawn structure is completely weird, and that normally means very good winning chances for both sides, and he does advance with his pawn.
Is that to stop the queen move?
Yeah, to stop the queen coming out. And also he's basically saying, Duda, with this move, he's happy for an endgame. Earlier we talked about, I mean, I was kind of half joking about the pawn islands, but that will become very relevant in an endgame. So no matter what black does now with his f-pawn, the queens, he marches forward, the queens are likely to get exchanged. And once that happens, we will be heading towards an endgame. Pawn structure is the key there.
And why does he march forwards with the pawn and not take the pawn?
Yeah, I think he just feels he wants to block things up. Also, this pawn defends the black bishop in the middle of the board. Normally, you don't want to take away from the center if your opponent can capture towards the center, if that makes sense. So black decided to block, and white's knight is on that outpost.
Yeah, things are heating up, and Well, Duda is simply getting ready to push the h-pawn 1 square forward and initiate an attack on the right side of the board. So this means that Mamedyarov has to distract white from this plan and has to then, therefore, take measures in the centre. Start threatening the weak pawn on d2, pile up the rooks in the middle.
Yeah, this is white's only weakness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the base of the pawn chain. This is a great connect 4 pawn chain, but it's always the base that's the weakest. So the problem is how to attack this one. It's not easy at all.
I mean, can you step forward with
A rook? Yeah, say the rook moves. But for example, even if I just slide back with the white bishop, I'm always defending this pawn now twice with the rook. I'm not sure I even want to do that, to be honest. I'm very tempted, as you mentioned, to start advancing. What's better than connect 4? It's connect 5. And this white pawn chain is going to really clamp down on black structure. Actually, any endgame now is just winning for white because black's king is going to be so stuck in the corner. Yeah, I mean, this is one idea, Jovanka. I'm itching to get rid of this knight.
So you...
I'm tempted to drop back with the black knight to try and exchange it off. But the problem is I lose this pawn, right?
Yeah.
I lose a pawn at the moment, so maybe that's not possible. But how else can you get any activity as black? Again, you can create one-move threats. You can drop the knight back to attack the queen, but the queen moves. And what are you doing? This knight looks nice, but it gets in the way of black's rooks. The more I look at it, the more I think white's in complete control.
I agree. I agree, actually, with your radical solution of just trading knights.
Yeah, maybe this is the best in the current position to just, even at the cost of a pawn, to try and get rid of this piece. And Mamedyarov agrees as well. Process of elimination, nothing looked good for black. So get rid of your opponent's best piece, even if you're sacrificing. And if, for example, white gobbles up a pawn right now with the white rook, then at least, OK, in a position like this, white's knight is gone, you can breathe a sigh of relief temporarily. And at least you're still very solid as black.
Yeah, exactly. And at least you have some freedom in the position. You know, the rooks now have open lines to attack down, you know, the B line, the A line.
Black's queen can swing across as well.
Exactly. And you do have to remember that white's king is still very shaky. So I definitely like this move. I mean, is there any way that Duda can kind of keep control instead of grabbing the material?
Good question, Jovanka. If we go back to the current game position, it's this one, how to keep control. The problem is if we move our knight or if we capture black's knight, then the queen exchange is going to happen. And I'm not sure this favours white so much. Yeah, suddenly black's bishop is just as good as the white bishop. Suddenly black's rook is on an open file. Again, there's a question of whether white can be greedy and grab a pawn, but it's just a pawn. The rest of black's position looks good suddenly. You've got an idea?
Yeah, I do have one idea, which is to capture... Sorry, not capture, just to move the bishop to the c4 square and attack the pawn.
Yeah, that's a big weakness. Not defended. Makes a lot of sense. I guess black would defend or maybe block with his own bishop. And yeah, I mean, it still looks good for white, to be honest. White can grab this free pawn whenever he wants, but still not easy to make any killer breakthrough. It feels like Shak is just trying to defend right now. And Duda, burning time, it's got to be said. He's looking for that killer blow. I think I would just grab a pawn and just move first, think later. Greed can't be that bad in this position.
Yeah, I did actually now just check the computer evaluation, and it says basically you can do all the 3 things that we mentioned.
OK.
And it's all good for white. And capturing the pawn is good.
Yeah. I think when in doubt, when you've kind of looked for the very direct attempts, sometimes you just have to go back to simple chess. I'm a big fan of simple chess. Just, OK, take a pawn. You can get this knight now. Take this knight off the board. You've made small gains in that process.
And we see Duda pause. I mean, is he considering capturing that knight with the queen?
Possibly.
Possibly. Take the game to an endgame and lower the risk. But
yeah, the white queen is defending you. Earlier you mentioned that d pawn. White's d2 pawn is vulnerable. So I'm expecting the pawn to take back. But maybe Duda's getting nervous. He does take with the queen.
Yeah, I think there's... Could there be a tactic on the board? No. So after... OK, the queens have come off the board, and now we're considering whether rook can just capture the pawn that's available on d2.
Yeah, black's rook can get active now. I think I'd be very tempted to go for that. Duda nodding his head.
Yep.
Mamedyarov agrees. He captures the pawn. Black's rook on the 2nd rank. That's normally good. White's rook on the 6th rank can go across and capture a pawn as well. So White can go a pawn up again, but still Black is getting active. White's pawn structure not ideal anymore. Those doubled white e-pawns, vulnerable. Feels like Mamedyarov's doing a good job of defending, but computer says, evaluation bar says, still good for White, still good for Duda.
Yeah.
1 minute though. Can he find a good continuation now?
Mamedyarov seems calm and in control, but he has started bopping his head a little bit.
Because the clock is ticking down. 1 minute. The position is very tense. I mean, this could quickly go wrong for Shak. He has to play very active moves. And Duda now is in full calculation mode. I think he's calculating whether to capture the pawn, whether he should spring forward with the bishop, threaten the pawn. There's so many things to get excited about. And he does move the bishop and now attacks the pawn and at the same time offers a trade of rooks.
Yep. So big threat on the board. Mamedyarov needs to react. I think he might have to trade off a set of rooks at some point, Mamedyarov.
I think he has to give a check first, and the rook comes down. And now is the time, I think, to offer, just to capture that rook.
Yep.
Trade him off.
Mamedyarov says no, though. He steps his rook back, and this is a really sneaky idea. He's got an idea in mind that he's actually giving up a rook, but he's going for the draw. He's going for what we call perpetual check. So in this position, he's just allowed White to capture this pawn. This is a double attack, a check, winning the black rook next move. But if you take the black rook, suddenly Black's rook gives a check. The king has to go into the corner. The black rook moves out the way. For example, here, with a discovered check, the White king has to move, and we'll see that kind of windmill operation, as they call it, just continue forever. The position would repeat itself. So the White king can't escape. Duda has indeed captured this pawn, so he's got the double attack. The king moves. OK, it went into the corner. But now, if Duda wants to win, he can't allow this check. Or he can allow it, but he has to give his king some breathing space.
But he's put his king in a mating net. It's vulnerable there. And now I'm thinking, OK, move the white rook on f1. Move it out of the way, perhaps align it with its other rook, and then threaten to do something.
Yeah, you're still attacking this piece. He does play that, Jovanka, you're right. I'm very surprised he went into the corner, Shak. Like you said, it's just really bad in the corner, the king. No way out of there, and he has to deal with a threat against the rook. I'm assuming the rook will move. And yeah, let's just show your idea. For example, if the rook steps up 1 square, White can actually deliver checkmate really nicely. Check. The bishop can go and take this rook, but after White's rook replaces its fellow, trapped in the corner now, the king. It can move, and final blow. Checkmate. Really nice, pretty mating pattern. So actually, Mamedyarov doesn't have too much choice. Yeah, he's got to move this rook. He's got to move it somewhere safe along the 8th rank. You could maybe flick in a check first, but I don't think that changes anything. Now the key difference is that White's king doesn't go into the corner, it runs towards the center, where it's much safer. No more kind of sensible checks, at least. So yeah, it's Duda in control at the moment. Shak, why did he go into the corner with the black king? The black king is just so bad here. Going to be tricks against that piece.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to defend his pawn. I mean, he was afraid. Such decisions happen when you're not cold and logical and you just play using your emotions. And definitely, Duda now has the upper hand.
Yeah, he has the upper hand. I'm expecting him, Mamedyarov, just to move his rook to this square or maybe this square. And the fight goes on, but White is a pawn up and with active pieces.
How important is it now for Mamedyarov to at least keep his advantage on the clock, to make a move fast now?
It's quite important, I feel. Already a few turns ago, it felt like he was hustling. He was playing some quick moves. They weren't necessarily the best moves or most accurate, but he was setting traps, playing instantly. And that nearly worked for him, but Duda's found a really clever way to continue the game, to avoid that draw, that drawing mechanism that we showed. And yeah, that time advantage, you're right, Kai, it's disappearing.
Yeah.
I think if it comes down to a pure scramble, Jovanka hit the nail on the head earlier. They've played 2 blitz matches in recent times. These two, Duda's won them both. So in terms of pure speed, Duda's younger, he's quicker. And Mamedyarov, I think if he does drift below 30 seconds in this game, he's going to find it difficult.
Yeah. Under a minute on the clock. He needs to move. The bar is loving it for young Christoph Duda. This is game 2. The first one was a draw. And if Duda wins this, he will take the lead. And with one more point, he will win the first match.
The king does run towards the center for Duda. And the computer does not like what Shak's doing. But Shak is going for the white king. So he's actually lined up the black rook with that white king. There is a pawn in the way. Black's f-pawn will try to push forward, blow open the line towards its enemy king. But white has a move before that happens.
Yeah, and he retreats his bishop. So he's basically saying to Shak, if you push forward with the pawn, I am just going to go and put my rook on f6 square and just start looking at your rook. And the position is critical. And take a look at the bar. I mean, it absolutely confirms it. Duda now has a winning advantage.
Yeah, you're right, Kai. You're right, Ivanka, sorry. Yeah, the black pawn. This was Shak's idea, to push forward, to blow open this line. But it's just one move too slow. If it was black's move, he would actually be breaking through and checkmating white. One move too slow, however, and your idea. The rook coming across, challenging the black rook. And actually, you cannot even take this rook because now a white pawn replaces it. I'm not even sure which pawn, but one of these two will march forward and make a new queen now. And we don't see that from Mamedyarov. Instead, we see the rook move. We saw black's rook try to slide down with a check. But look at this. It's a passed pawn 2 squares away. This king in the corner is just as weak as white's king, actually. White's king at least can run. White's king can run towards the center if it gets checked. But I think black's king is worse out of the two. He's going for checkmate, Shak, but is he going to get mated himself?
Yeah. The white pawn is simply going to step forward, attack the rook.
Yeah. The rook.
And there it comes. The rook will move, and now it's big trouble for Shak. But can Duda finish him off?
Yeah, that's the big question. For example, can Duda slide his rook across? Maybe that's one idea, to try and go for the black king in the corner. You have to calculate this well. It's a scramble, 20 seconds left each player. Maybe that's not the best move even. Maybe there's others.
So he doesn't need to protect this pawn?
He is actually giving it away. So if that pawn was captured, there would have been a really nice checkmating idea on the 8th rank. White's rook would have gone up to the top of the board and trapped the black king in the corner. So black's king has to come out first.
Okay.
So temporarily, Duda is 2 pawns up. I really like what he did, actually, keeping things simple on his last move, getting rid of one of black's pawns and 2-pawn advantage. Like you said, Kai, if he can keep that white pawn on the e7 square, which he's just done, protecting it, he should win the game. That white pawn on e7 is too strong. It paralyzes a whole rook on its own. And white's got a threat. White's bishop is going to slide 1 square across on the diagonal to go and attack black's rook at the top of the board. If it can kick away the blockader, it's game over.
It is game over, and I feel the only chance that Shak has is basically to give a rook a check. And we see him capture a pawn, and the king swiftly steps up. It's your threat. It's going to happen, David. The bishop is going to go and attack the rook, and Duda will be winning.
Yeah. Wow, the evaluation bar's shot right up. Completely winning now for white.
Wow.
White's king is out of danger. Kings in endgames, if they're in the corner, they can get trapped. If they're in the center, nearly never, because they can run anywhere. And look at this. The king active, Shak shaking his head. Black's rook and bishop, they're tied up in knots. The black rook has to move. It has to keep defending its bishop. But, yeah, the other rook is going to drop.
And Shak looks away. He knows his position is lost, and it's over.
He lets his clock run out, Shak, and he loses game 2.
Wow, Duda takes the lead. 40 moves with the white pieces, winning game 2 to take the lead. Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, he will now have to make a comeback.